Welcome, fellow hobbyists, to episode 381 of Hobby Hotline. We have got another great show planned for today. Joining me, John, the 3D80s Kid, is your host. I have Dr. Jim Beckett and Chris Carlin.
Hey,
how's it going today, Dr. Beckett?
Going great.
How about you, Chris?
Doing awesome. I was just up in Burbank this week, working at Burbank Sports Cards, the submission center up there, and that shop is so vibrant, and there's so much energy, and people from all over the world coming in there. It really gets you all fired up about the hobby. It's a lot of fun.
Well, it's got a crazy volume of stuff flowing through that building, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's a whirlwind.
Yeah, I see those monthly reports from GemRate, and it's insane. Of course, many of it is Pokemon these days, but
yeah, for sure.
But yeah, let's say hello to the chat this morning. People are starting to come in. I know it's early, especially for folks like me on the West Coast. But we have got Scott Stukes, welcome. Peter B, Philly Joe, Mad City Brew, good morning. Jayhawker Vintage Cards from Kansas. Saber Geek, we have got Baseball Curmudgeon, Confluence Sports Cards. Our friend Ruben Snyder is in the house. So welcome, everybody. For our first topic of the day, we are going to talk about the fact that now the football card license has been added to the gauntlet that is owned by Fanatics. So they basically have a stranglehold on the licenses for all three major sports moving for the foreseeable future. What are we going to see as a result of this? Are we going to see good things? I mean, the 10Xing hasn't quite happened yet. What do you guys foresee moving forward on this subject?
You heard it here first. This will be the biggest year in the history of football cards because Fanatics has figured out a way to get a double year. I think this 2026 year is going to be spectacular for football.
Yeah,
we'll do okay on the others too, but I think football is really going to emerge.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think stranglehold's a tough way to put it. You know, they put up and worked in a way to acquire the license, but I think collectors, oftentimes we're active on X and we're active on Facebook and these other Instagram, of course. But I think it's really interesting seeing what I'm hearing and seeing from LinkedIn in particular, from Topps people that work there, and the excitement and energy around it. And some of the people I know in the industry who are really solid at building products are already talking about some of the things that they're going to be able to do with that. And I mean, some of the innovations, although maybe, not accessible to everyone, are pretty darn cool and compelling if Topps can bring things like debut patches to football. That's pretty darn compelling. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I know there's going to be some not everything's going to be very wallet friendly, which is tough, but it's going to be something to watch for sure. And there will definitely be things that have not been done before that I think will be pretty compelling. And I'll say this, I'm not sure that we're going to see the end of Panini in football. They've been able to do some things that are pretty compelling and from an artistic standpoint, with both Downtown and some of the manga things that they've been doing that aren't bad for an unlicensed type of product. Like it's wouldn't distract you when you've got all these other things happening on the card to not see a logo. So it'll be interesting to see how they do too. And I know that's a subject for a little later, but I'm cautiously optimistic. We're heading into the Topps conference Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week. I know that what they're doing with NFL, we're going to start hearing things about their plans right off the bat. So I, from what I understand, this TOPS conference, industry conference, is going to be one of their biggest in the history of their company. I believe they have over 800 attendees coming, and just to help you understand how big that is, I just did the Upper Deck conference in January, and they had one of their biggest conferences with about 400 attendees. So this is going to be a big week, I think, in terms of news that we have about what their plans are, and we'll just have to buckle up and see how it goes as collectors.
Well, a lot of people, over the years have not liked what Panini did with like relic material just being completely unconnected to an actual game and things like that. I mean, is Fanatics having better access on that front going to bring back the quality of those kinds of items? Or, I mean, what should we see on that front?
I think the photo matching stuff is getting better and better, but people are looking closer and closer, and it seems like to me it's watering down the verbiage on the back of the cards. They're afraid to say that this was used in this exact game at this moment. But I don't think there ought to be truth in packaging, and I think there is. It's just sometimes I think some of the companies occasionally have understated. They don't want to overpromise that this is exactly that, because I think they've been burned.
Yeah, and that's one of the tricky things, Dr. Jim, is, I was working at Upper Deck back in the heyday when Upper Deck had all the licenses. And it's when you have so many things going on, it's very easy internally to get distracted or to have things get missed, because there's so many people involved in making the product at that point, and there's so many different things happening that you have things go out that aren't quite right. And especially, you mentioned we haven't 10x the hobby. Well, since they coined that phrase, we've at least 3x or 4x the hobby. When I started at PSA 4 years ago, we could grade 40,000 cards a day. Now we're grading 90 to 100,000 cards a day, and we still can't keep up with what people are trying to submit. And really what I believe has happened is a globalization of the hobby. Having been to Japan twice in the last year for hobby events and Macau and things like that, the hobby has grown internationally over the last few years like I've never seen in my 30 years in the hobby. So I think that with baseball being a global sport for sure, basketball being a global sport, football, it's definitely an American sport, but I think that this is just going to take it to another level for them. But I do believe that we're going to see some growing pains with this, where maybe some one-of-ones get out that aren't numbered, or there's two versions of the one-of-ones. There's those types of things that are definitely growing pains that happen when you scale up like this.
Well, I mean, I would kind of argue the multiplication to this point of the hobby has more to do with the fact that COVID got people back into this hobby for something to do, and many of them stayed, and now they're sharing it with their kids and things like that. And that stage brought in all the shoe flipper kind of guys that have now left because it's not quite as hot. But
well, I got to give credit to Topps on keeping people in with some of the things that they have done, especially with regard to their Rip Night events. Coordinating an athlete appearance is a nightmare. I've had athletes steal limos, and not show, and all sorts of nonsense that can happen with that. And they execute 80 appearances in one night, and it's wild. So, and then you have a lot of the mainstream things. You can say what you want about Michael Rubin, but people look at him, people see him, and some of the relationships he has when you've got Tom Brady opening up card shops. this is probably a good thing. It's showing that the mainstream appeal of what we've always loved. And it reminds me a lot of when I was a kid. I really loved indie bands, like the bands that people didn't quite know about. And then when sometimes they would get really big, like Blink 182 in the beginning was a band I just loved. And then they started selling out, stadiums. And it felt a little weird to me that my little thing had gotten so big. And that's really how I kind of feel about the hobby sometimes is, this was just a small community that, everyone knew each other's names like a Cheers. And now it's become this big entity, this big brew house, so to say.
Hey, John, one thing,
Yeah.
COVID certainly is part of the story, but if you go back in those days, you have a couple of giant, one giant entrant is you can look at the history of the hobby before Fanatics and then post Fanatics, Fanatics buying Topps. I think that's a big part of the growth story. The other thing is PSA was, back in my BGS days, was always a very worthy, fierce competitor who actually were winning, were beating us in volume, certainly. But that's nothing compared to what they've become under Nat Turner in the collector's overarching brand. They've become just an absolute giant. It wasn't a sleeping giant that got woken up, but if you look at the market cap of PSA and collectors over this time period, it's more than 10x. And so a lot of this growth in the hobby has been because of some of these new entrants who really think big. And so there already is a thought, we turned inward with COVID and thought, well, what are we going to do and all that stuff. But when we came out, we said, hey, what's out there? And all of a sudden there were these two very large entities that weren't there before who thought really big. And who would have thought we're, a million cards a month or 100,000 cards a day getting graded? It would be even mind-boggling to Joe Orlando.
Yeah.
Previous regime.
Yeah. It is. I see Joe like once a week. Yeah.
And think about Topps not under the umbrella of Fanatics. What Topps was doing. Topps was doing fine, but there's a whole nother gear that they're in now.
Well, Dr. Jim, don't you think that when Michael Eisner, former head of Disney, buys Topps, like this is what I think what we're seeing now with Topps and Fanatics is kind of what we all believed might happen with Michael Eisner owning Topps, and now we're seeing it with Michael Rubin. So
okay, here's the way I would say it: is that Michael Eisner came from Disney. Hey, we're Disney. We're Disney. He goes to Topps. Hey, we're Topps. We're Topps. We're the Topps. Fanatics comes in, buys Topps, and they say we're Fanatics. We're taking over. We're going to the top, and come with us. So
yeah, I don't.
That's the different mindset there.
Yeah.
Because it's in hyperdrive now.
Yeah.
Compared to what it was 5 or 10 years ago.
Well, if anyone wants to take part in any of this conversation, the chat or the link is in the chat. And what about the perspective that many folks have here? Hoops Hobby Hangout. Seems like Fanatics is using the gambling and lottery ticket aspect of the hobby to keep people in and attract new people. Not sure that's necessarily good. And I would say even along with that, it feels like a lot of the product is more geared towards just selling to breakers. I mean, has gambling just too pervasive now in this whole space?
It is an aspect of the hobby. It's not the whole hobby. If it was the whole hobby, we'd be in a lot of trouble and we'd be regulated. We really would be regulated. But it's a part of the hobby, and I hope it's not too big of a part of the hobby. But the growth path for Fanatics, the company, the entities that they are, goes through gambling. And so I've said there's a gamification of the hobby and of the industry. And I think the hobby needs to be somewhat resistant, that there's got to be other ways to enjoy the hobby besides the hits and the strikeout or home run?
Well, I like opening product with my kids. And this is a recent product from Topps Star Wars Smuggler's Outpost. And it is kind of geared towards a breaker. You've got this breaker piece on top, so you can kind of disguise what's coming next. But I will say, I wasn't getting that type of product from old Topps. This is a very compelling product, a little higher end, a lot of exciting content in it, sketch cards, autographs. The access Topps has gotten through Fanatics with regard to signers is incredible. We're seeing Pedro Pascal autographs and for Fantastic Four and Mandalorian, and the list of Marvel signers they've got since they acquired that license is incredible. At Upper Deck, we had Marvel for a while, and we were able to get some okay names, but we weren't getting Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds and dual autograph cards of those guys. The access they have is making content better. Even if, you're not going to get one out of any box. For collectors, a lot of time, it's that thrill of at least having the opportunity, the chance. And I know that it walks a very fine line on gambling, not gambling, but the excitement that you can get and the memories that you can create when you pull something exciting with a family member. It's every time that happens, I see it in my kids' eyes where seeds are being planted that, I know they're going to kind of put the hobby on the side when they find out about girls. But when they come back later, I know that they'll be really excited about what it's become and some of the cards that they have in their collection.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe people don't leave anymore for girls. Maybe they bring their girlfriends along with them, and they're the cool kids in school because they've got all this.
Dr. Jim,
their side gig is amazing.
Yeah, you're right. It used to be that way, and now with Instagram in particular, I'm seeing a lot of male teens sticking around and flexing more than they used to when they would be like, all right, this is a nerd fest. Now they see it as something cool. And when you have white pages being created that say trading cards are cool again, it's true. There is a cool factor to it.
So you're a 16-year-old girl, and what are you going to say? My boyfriend works at McDonald's, or my boyfriend does cards on the weekend, and we can go to any concert, any restaurant, any activity that we want to.
Well, I mean, now it's like one of the many avenues of like the money side hustle, cool things.
Flexing. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Self-glossing, the whole thing.
I mean, yeah, I know my wife totally thinks I'm cooler because of what's behind me.
There you go. Okay.
No.
My wife is downstairs rolling her eyes.
I'm sticking to my story.
All right. What else we got? Social media's exploded our hobby, where once you were happy with your friends, neighborhoods, LCS, and meeting others through nearby shows, the exposure has more than bazillion quadrupled. That is the truth there, isn't it? So,
well, one thing I have loved about social media is some of the Facebook groups, because I collect some obscure things, and to be able to find 10, 20, hundreds of like-minded people in some of these Facebook groups that are very niche, whether it be, air card collectors or Star Wars collectors, things along those lines. It's finding your tribe. It's a sense of belonging and a sense of excitement about what other people are pulling that have become your Facebook friends, So I've stopped using Facebook for my personal seeing how friends are, what they're up to really my hobby now, because it's a very effective tool that way. So yes, there's a flexing and self-glossing that goes on social media, but there's also a very vibrant community, I would say.
all right, absolutely. So, we have a caller. Welcome to Hobby Hotline, Joey.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey.
Joey?
Doing well. What brings you on screen?
I don't know. I like the idea of allowing everyone and welcoming everyone on. So I thought if I have a few minutes before my kids wake up and start hounding me, I'll try to jump on.
Any thoughts on the particular subject or any questions for the panel?
I just think that one thing I kind of think you guys were saying in the last couple of minutes as I was turning on my computer and stuff is I think that what everything has shifted towards, like since COVID and Fanatics taking over and everything, there's just that shift towards focus on money, whether it's in breaking. I mean, when in 2010, I joined breaks, and breaks were like $10 or $20 a team, so that we can share the cost of a box and hopefully get PC cards. Right now, breaking is about optimizing the income for the breaker while others can take a lottery ticket to try to get a big card, right? So I think whether it's flipping or breaking or whatever aspect, it's just very money focused. And I think that's the one observation I've had.
Well, it's never been a cheap hobby, right? Money has always been an aspect of it for sure. But yeah, that is the side that's tough to kind of deal with, I would say, is how expensive it can get. And especially, when you see collectors that are affected by it, when you see collectors saying that, hey, I'm selling off my collection, I can't do it anymore, that type of thing. It's sad. And it's one of those things where, you see gambling hotlines or things along those lines. I think the collecting community right now does a really good job of saying, take a break, come back. We love having you here, what have you. But I think the industry probably could do a better job of that. Manufacturers could, in some gambling sites, they have a cool off button or a button that you can hit where, you're not allowed to place a bet for 24 hours or whatever it may be. And for things like ePack or blockchain or even, buying stuff off the websites, that might be a good idea for manufacturers to take, but to date, they haven't wanted to.
Hey, question for you, Joey. What's to stop you from getting 31 friends or a group of friends, one for each team, and setting up a breaker co-op? Where the middleman is cut out, you're kind of sharing the cost, and you're agreeing. It's tricky to figure out how you're going to allocate costs unless you want to just randomize it. But what's to stop that? Because the breakers are providing a service, and for that they're taking a fee. But and people want to pay them. So what's stopping you from lowering the cost by getting 31 like-minded friends?
I think just ultimately the cost of wax. I mean, even if you split it against across 31 people, you're still. I mostly collect basketball, where maybe wax is more expensive than it is in other sports, but still spending $30 a person to open a box of 10 cards. I mean, it's still cost prohibitive, and the increase in the cost of wax, I mean, it has a lot of factors, but I think a lot of it has to do with the increased exposure through COVID. It's a more popular, obviously the hobby and collecting or cards in general, whatever angle people are taking is more popular than it has been in the past. And that's increased the cost of wax. And I think the reason that the market can withstand that increased cost of wax is because of, like you said, trying to split up that cost. But I still think that for me, if I went to 30 people and said, hey, let's split up a $900 box of top chrome sapphire basketball or whatever, and we might be lucky to get it at that price, it still doesn't make sense to open.
So your problem is more with the manufacturers than it is with the breakers, that they're just putting out product, and that it has to be fractionalized, it has to be broken. And so, but it's still overpriced compared to 5 years ago, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I've identified a single individual. I don't know that I even have a problem with any of it. It's just, I think, like Chris mentioned, the industry aspect of the hobby is gotten really money hungry, which is understandable. They're all businesses. I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing. It's just there's a shift where that's what a lot of the focus is. And I think if you can tailor your hobby experience so that's not the focus, and you can interact with collectors and tailor your social media and your YouTube and whatever where you're focused and you're getting fed kind of the collecting aspect of things, or maybe those who are more focused on the cards and the love of the cards and building their collection. But I think it's just kind of a product of that. And unfortunately, for those who enjoy opening boxes, that's just one part of the hobby that's no longer accessible to you if you don't care, if you're not part of the breaking culture or whatever.
Yeah, and I've seen a shift to hobbyists like you buying older product or just buying singles. And honestly, buying singles is the safest way. NBA is a really tricky segment of our category, because if you think about it, for baseball, you have a 30-man roster, right? So, and on the Padres, the team I collect, I've got a lot of stars I could chase. I got Manny Machado, I got Fernando Tatis Jr., I've got pitchers, Mason Miller. So there's a lot of stars that have good value. In football, you've got running backs, quarterbacks, wide receivers, a larger team where there's a couple stars on each team. In hockey, you have 3 lines of players and usually a couple superstars on each team. In basketball, you usually have 1. You have 5 guys that are out there. In the draft, you only have 2 rounds of a draft compared to these other leagues that have 15. So you have a smaller selection of players and a smaller selection of players that can value out. And to make matters worse, you don't have Michael Jordan because he's locked up by Upper Deck. And even worse than that, LeBron James hates signing and is only doing these 1-of-1 cards. And I don't know, I just saw a Superfractor with his new signature. It's a crown and a line. So I think it's a tough time to be an NBA collector, man. If it was me, and I do collect a little NBA, but I'm buying singles. I'm not buying boxes.
But you can't buy singles unless somebody breaks it. And
no, but I'd rather pay. I'd rather pay $1,000 for a cool card than $1,000 for 3 boxes where I get $40 worth of cards out of.
But you can't get that card unless somebody buys the box, breaks it, and all that. But the other point I was going to make is that the card companies are configuring their products to cater to breakers. Breakers maybe are, I don't know if they're up to 50% of the product that gets out there is opened by breakers, but I bet it's approaching that. And certainly with the higher end products, it probably is even more than that. So somebody's got to buy it, and then they've got to open it, and they've got to release it into the hobby. The industry is about the products. The hobby's about the cards that we love. So I share your concern, Joey. It's just that we're going against the grain of what a profit-seeking company is doing. They're giving their best customers, which their best customers, I think, are the people that want the cards for their collection, but they think their best customer is the breaker who's taking that product from them and then breaking it and having a lot of fun with it and getting it into the hands of people who then churn it and transact it and eventually get it into the hands of Chris.
Well, for the manufacturers, Dr. Jim, I would always fight for the hobby shop. I think that there's something really special that happens in hobby shops. And again, being at Burbank Sports Cards the last couple of days, seeing that it's a special place. But for manufacturers, using breakers is the easy button. It's their easy way to, all right, I don't have to worry about this. We don't have to fight with this guy on his allocation or what have you. Here's this chunk. We'll just make it a segment, and that's our easy button. And it feels like that's how that's been going.
Well, it's not just easy. It's probably good business. If somebody looked at it from afar, they'd say, do you want to sell things slow for lower prices, or do you want to sell things fast for higher prices?
Well, I think there's also, you have to look at the quality of the individuals representing your brand. And one thing I really enjoyed about working at Upper Deck is, if there was a breaker that's drunk on, and breaking or using profanity or things along those lines, they'd cut them off. They wouldn't want that type of person representing their brand. And I think some of the other manufacturers haven't been that strict with regard to enforcement, and it makes for a poor experience for our hobby. Our industry has had enough negativity with regard to people doing the wrong things or people taking advantage of each other or counterfeiters or things along those lines, that it doesn't need another wave of negativity from breakers who aren't focused on running it as a business, more running it as a fun thing to do on a Friday night.
I agree with you. And that was absolutely the 20th century sentiment. But in the 21st century, nobody's blaming the phone company for profanity over the phone lines, and you can get away with stuff on the various social media platforms because they don't represent the platform. And yeah, they ought to kick them out. But if they kick them out, they just come back under a different name. So I will say this, profanity, I'd like to see that eliminated, and any other kinds of kind of illegal activities. But drunk on camera, good luck with that. There's people that I'm convinced they've got a shtick, and whether they're drunk on some substance or just living life large, that's part of the angle that they have, and they move product. But yeah, I would draw the line, and like I said, especially if it's one of your bigger breakers. Wow. They got to clean up their act or move on.
So Joey, how old are your kids?
5.5, 3.5, and 10 months.
That's awesome, man. Do you obviously, do you ever open with them?
Very little, but yeah. And what I've found myself deciding to open are essentially retail of sets that I want to build, base sets I want to build, where I like the look of the cards. And if we end up getting nothing but a good chunk of a base set out of a retail box, it's a cheap way to open with them, and that's it.
Oh man, you're a great dad. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. I think maybe it's time to move on to the next topic. Can a company without licenses actually stay viable long term? I mean, is Panini at this point on life support?
Is Upper Deck on life support? No. Is Leaf on life support? No. They need to right size, and their costs just went down, guys. So they have less costs, and if they're smart about how they do it, and like Chris was saying, is it possible that they were so smart at Panini that they developed kabooms and downtowns and color blasts in advance of when they would need them, because they are cards that can stand without licensing and be case hits that people salivate over? So yeah, they're going to be around.
Yeah, I know a few people over there. They're tenacious, man. They're of all the manufacturers, I think Panini has a lot of the people who are the most passionate collectors that work there. So I think they're gonna keep fighting tooth or nail, and they're fighters. So I remember not being a big fan of them coming in. I kind of felt like they were an Italian company taking an American hobby, but I think it's really interesting to have a hobby LinkedIn and follow some people at some of these companies, because you hear some things that you wouldn't hear otherwise, just about things that they're working on or things that they're personally excited about. And they do not stop signing licensing agreements, and some of these things may seem very fringe or very out there, like the Winston Cup Truck Series they just signed a deal with. But there's going to be collectors for that, and it does expand the universe of our hobby, which isn't a bad thing at all. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to kind of watch. What do you think, Joey?
I agree with kind of both of you. I don't think that Panini's on life support at all, at least in the, again, basketball perspective. I think what the advantage to them is that they've established brands that basketball collectors like, things like Donruss, things like Noir. I mean, they announced their unlicensed Noir. I don't know what it'll end up looking like and if people end up wanting to collect those cards, but at least from the previews, they've done a good job. Topps, when they were doing unlicensed basketball a year or two ago, it looked bad. I mean, it was really obviously airbrushed, photoshopped. It looks like Panini's done a good job in their previews of choosing photos that it doesn't make it where it's really obvious that they're photoshopping out the team logo or whatever. And they, again, those certain brands they have, like Flawless and Prism and Noir, are well loved in the basketball card world. And I think that as long as they design it well, and as long as they continue to get people to sign their cards on card and whatever, I think they'll have a market for it.
Well, there's another aspect we haven't talked about, and that's the rapid expansion of AI, and with regard to design and other functionality that it brings. You know, I had this old photograph of my father-in-law and his dad in Vietnam, and it's grainy and just it's cool, but the quality sucks. I was talking to someone about restoring it professionally, and they wanted $400, and I was like, oh, I'll do it later. And then I started monkeying around with Grok, and I put that photo in there and said, restore it for clarity and sharpness. And it came back, and now I have the best Father's Day gift in the world. The clarity is incredible. And instead of having to do a birthday flyer for my wife that I just did, a year ago, I would have done it on Canva and spent 4 hours on it. Now I'm pumping it into ChatGPT and telling it what I need, and a beautifully designed flyer comes out. Now think about what that's going to do for card manufacturers. And also, there's a lot of cool things that can happen with Topps with regard to older imagery and imagery that might have been damaged that they haven't been able to use yet, because we get a lot of images that have been used before. And there's things that I can do also where my son's not smiling in a photo, and I could say, make him smile, and bing, bang, boom, he's smiling. So the same Joe DiMaggio photo where we may have seen it before, where he's mad, now he's smiling, at the plate. There's so much that is coming for us as collectors. For manufacturers, it takes about 9 months to a year for products to flush out and get to the market. And I think what we're going to see is a higher quality of imagery and a higher quality of design over the next few years that might be able to mask some of that non-licensed stuff, Joey.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at certain unlicensed things, I know that, Tyson Beck does his collaborations with athletes, and he sells those cards for a lot of money. People want those cards. I think the fact that there's no team logo, he just did a Karl Anthony Towns one, or he just advertised it. I think Knicks collectors are still going to go after a card like that. So.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you're thinking we're going to end up having cards with photos that aren't real photos?
Absolutely.
We already have that.
They'll need to get approved by the leagues and the PA, but yeah, absolutely, that'll happen.
Well, no, they will if it's a card that is ostensibly licensed by the league and the play.
Yeah. I mean, did the manga photos happen?
Then
No,
you just work with the person,
and I think we're going to see art and photos blur.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose
Licensing
Panini could use it and then get the logo stuff automatically removed by the AI for them too. So
yeah, it won't feel airbrushed.
And there are certainly certain photos that I've seen on top 25, 26 basketball cards where I've questioned whether they're legitimate photos or generated by AI.
No, and the first AI was really wonky. I forget, I think it was a downtown where the football field was sideways instead of vertical. And how did that get through quality assurance? But it gets better every day. It's wild.
Yeah, and I'm sure, an industry like that is going to be using the top-notch level that, you see thumbnails all over the place in the internet space that are clearly AI, but yeah, once you get to the high level stuff, no one will be able to tell the difference. So, all right. How about our last topic then? This one came up in our chat for Hobby Hotline where someone had mentioned that PSA was coming to the Dallas Card Show, which is, I think Rich Klein brought it up because that's local for him. And so then this became the topic of grading companies even choosing to go to shows. What goes into the process where they decide where to go, when to go? With two folks that, Dr. Jim, for years you were head of a grading company and Chris integrated into PSA there. Like, what's the decision-making process of when and where they go?
Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Before Nat took over the company, PSA didn't go a lot of places. They used dealers and that was a good way. That was kind of the easy button, kind of like Breakers is we'll use dealers and they're going to be at all these shows anyway. We got to focus on in-house. And honestly, one of the reasons why I was brought here is to get out there and be a face for PSA out there, because when I came there's just a lot of confusion about how does this even work, and I still answer those questions every day at events. How do I do this? I've never graded anything before. These are all very common questions. And one of the things that Nat Turner did that was really smart was invest in technology and remove a lot of the friction for a customer to grade an item. And now I'm not going to do a PSA commercial, but this stuff is really cool where, if I have the PSA app, I can hit one button, scan a card, it comes up. I have access to the population reports, what it sells at in different grades. And all I have to do is hit grade, and then enter my credit card information and hand it to someone. And in the beginning, when I started, there were awful lines for grading services, like crazy. People would wait 4 hours at a show just to drop something off. And I've always been a big believer, like, give the show back to collectors. Don't make them wait in line for your redemptions. Have a more efficient way, if you're a manufacturer, of getting people the product. And we were able to develop a QR code system. So instead of people having to print up mountains of forms and bring them to us, now they just scan a QR code. We take in the item, confirm what it is, and off they go to enjoy the show. So for PSA, and I know for a lot of other grading manufacturers as well, or grading companies as well, getting in front of the customer is a really important thing to do, and to be able to explain the service and walk them through it. And for me, I get such enjoyment out of seeing the light go on in people's eyes when they're like, oh, I get it. Or, yeah, I just got the email that you received it here. So I think that a smart company in this day and age, when everything is moving to chatbots and here's a kiosk that you deal with, for collecting, people want to talk to a human being. People want to talk to someone who collects themselves. People want to talk to people who are passionate about the industry and who can walk them and guide them on the right journey for what they want to get done. And what I tell my staff all the time is, you're going to have to, if we're going to be successful at this, you're going to have to tell people no sometimes. When I look at a card through a loop, I'm not a grader. I always tell people I'm not a grader, but if I can see it, the grader's definitely going to see it. And I'll show them, look through the loop, hold it close to your eye and close to the card till it comes into focus. And do you see this corner here? A lot of people don't know to look through, a magnification like the graders will to see things. So I think that human connection is so important. And I'm really happy that we see value in attending shows like the Dallas Card Show. And it's not just that, PSA has started doing, we did 98 drop-off events at hobby shops last year, where we're going to different hobby shops throughout the North America and taking in submissions, but more than that, answering questions and guiding people on that right path of their collecting journey. So for us, what we look for in an event is, Are there going to be a lot of collectors there? But also it's fun to attend events that we haven't done before. We were just in Louisiana for an event, and people were so excited that we were there. So I think it's a little bit of a mix of what's an established show or an established shop, and where haven't we been before, where we can reach a new audience and touch a new community.
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt the conversation, but I have to jump off. I apologize.
Yeah, take care of those kids. It was awesome having you on. I think you were our first caller in like 2 years, so that's great.
Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on to talk cards.
Appreciate you.
Chris, I'm glad you went first. I met with Colin, the GM over at
good
Beckett a few days ago, and we talked about exactly that, about how the BGS brand has been especially strong at the Dallas Card Show, but it also has done a lot of shows around the country over the years. And he was saying that the learnings, the process improvements that have really helped PSA to scale are being brought to the Beckett ingestion process, because there were people just waiting super long lines around the corner for the BGS to get their cards in Thursday and Friday at the Dallas Card Show last month. And that's, you like to have a little bit of a line, but that's really too much. The other thing I would say is that when we were contemplating this many years ago and thinking about going to shows, we never thought of it as a marketing expense. We thought of it as a profit center. It's very expensive to set up there. And we were thinking, hey, well, I hope we can break even. It was no. Is there the demand there? Because you do charge it. There's higher rates, especially if you want same day service. And so is this going to work? And frequently it did. The crazy thing is sometimes it worked even better if PSA was there also.
Yeah.
In other words, when you have two there at the same time, the people come out with their cards, and they're not really playing one off against the other, but they're just saying, this is a major show. PSA is going to be there. BGS is going to be there. I'm going to take my cards. And certainly in the old days, they had certain cards they took to BGS, certain cards they took to PSA. And, when people were talking about how crummy BGS was doing, it just didn't comport with what you saw at the shows, because BGS has always had a niche. It's always had a certain edge in certain things they did. Not across the board, but shows were what. So it is a marketing situation. You do get marketing benefit of that, but it was a profit center for us.
Yeah, I think when I started, Dr. Jim, our lines were so crazy that people would be like, "Oh, I'll just take it to Beckett."
Thank you.
But now I think as we look to give the shows back and make intake quicker, it's a customer experience opportunity for us, and there's a lot of value in that, because the longer you have a customer, the more valuable they are to an organization. So for us, over the last few years in particular, we've really used it as a customer experience type of opportunity. Which
I won't say you've perfected, but certainly your bringing you over was a giant step in that direction, and kudos to you. But what the criticism that was 3 months ago on this very show about, hey, Collectors is taking over and they're going to crush BGS and SGC, we're now seeing that that's not what's happening. There's some significant brand distinctions between what SGC is doing, what BGS is doing, and what PSA is doing. And not only can they coexist, but they can feed off each other. I don't think PSA is going to have a black label anytime soon. They're leaving that alone. SGC has real strength in the pre-war. They're leaving that, and that's not as big a market. And they haven't exported they haven't brought in their value upcharge to certainly to BGS, which would again disturb the market differentiation, which is good. We don't want a monolith grading experience, one size fits all. But a universal submission form was something we talked about. That would be a step in the right to make it easy for people to grade, and then easier for them to know why it got the grade they got. We talked.
Hey, can we go back to that comment? Sorry, Dr. Jim, the comment from Abel, because it's a good one. The national lines at the national he mentions, we were able to get them down to about 20 minutes to an hour at the last national by using a lot of different queuing systems. But there are digital queuing systems that work well unless you have 150,000 people all under one roof. And then these queuing systems don't work as well because they are sending text messages to customers letting them know it's your turn in line, and they don't get them or they don't get them in the same speed or expediency when you're out at somewhere like Disneyland that's much more wide open and broad and doesn't have that concentration of people. So that's been a tough one, Abel, that we've been working on. And one thing that I've found value in that I think we'll do again this year is events to help people plan and prep before the national begins. So one of the things that bottlenecks some of these lines are those first timers. So if we could host some type of first time event or something like that to help get everyone ready, it helps the line go a lot quicker. So we'll do things like that. And then we've also been doing dealer submissions can take a little bit. We've been giving them their own queues and letting them submit a little earlier before the show starts if we can get our booth up and ready. So the national is a different animal on a lot of different ways, but it's one that lines are always tricky at.
Well, back to Dr. Beckett's talking about the three companies all under one roof. As you can see from my back wall, I had a particular preference in grading company. And I'm a little bitter about the situation because of like the very topic we're discussing. They have completely just removed SGC's presence at any show. We even have the upcoming Strongsville show next weekend that SGC has been going to for years. Seems like it would be their bread and butter show to go to, and yet they're not sending them. So how do I interpret that any other way than they're basically squashing my favorite brand into oblivion?
Yeah. I'm not part of that team, but I just would say, John, I would rise up. And I would gather cronies and other vintage collectors that are fans of SGC and say, and contact somebody at Collectors, perhaps Chris Carlin, and say, look, we have 50 guys that are going to be at that show that want to submit to SGC. And we're going to guarantee you this kind of submission volume. Can you do that for us? I bet they could if you knew that. But, they're thinking, maybe they're, like I said, they don't want to come as a marketing expense. They don't need to market to that group. They need to serve that group.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of guys go to that show and they would bring their high dollar cards that they don't want to ship and
I'm saying,
give it to them in person.
It's too late for this year, but it's for next year. Just say, look, that was disappointing. What would it take? And like I said, it's C. Carlin at collectors.com.
Hey, I will say that one thing that's
makes a lot of sense, John. That makes a lot
one thing that's been really interesting for me on the latest ride of my career here with Collectors is leadership has kept these companies very separate. So I have not worked on anything with Beckett. I have not worked on anything with SGC. There is a lot of sharing of information with regard to operational and grading talent, where they're sharing ideas and concepts that work really well here. Let's use that over here to make capacity better, to make things move through quicker, safer, to reduce damages. That type of sharing has happened. But from a marketing standpoint or event standpoint, I don't work with SGC or BGS. They operate on their own. And one of the things I know that both of those companies, the leadership on SGC and Beckett in particular, are working to improve the operational efficiencies first before they get to do the fun stuff, if that makes sense. So you have to make sure you're one thing that I was told by someone I value very much, the former CEO of Collectors, Mike West out of Dallas, and he has retired. But I came over here with all these fun ideas of things I wanted to do, and he was very disciplined with me and said, Chris, you've got to get your blocking and tackling down first before you can work on these trick plays and this fun stuff. And it's right. You have to have your house in order before you can do some of these other things. And I think that's where, again, I'm not working with SGC or BGS, but from what I've learned of the culture of Collectors is let's get things humming before we do some of these other fun things.
I mean, as the bitter SGC fan, I see it as the sharing was the SGC shared their graders into the neighboring suite that now says PSA. And now I have less people available to actually have good turnaround times. And, you know, maybe the quality is not even there at the same place anymore either. So,
yeah, but SGC used to have the best turnaround times in the industry.
Yeah.
And so that's gone. They're going to now be consistent with BGS, which is slow now, and PSA, which is slow now.
Well, again, we're getting back to the fact that everyone's missing is demand for grading services has gone through the roof. PSA does not want to charge $32 for a card to get graded. We do not. But we have to right now to slow the capacity, or slow the demand of what's coming through. And the company is scaling like I can't believe. Again, going from grading 40,000 cards 4 years ago to 90,000 to 100,000 today. There's facilities that are opening across the world to address the globalization of the hobby. So there's facilities coming on in Germany, more being done in Europe in particular, but in China and Japan, we have some of the best talent, I think, in the grading business with Brad Hartland in Canada and things like that. So I think a lot of these capacity issues will be addressed over the next year. And there's something that no one's really been talking about, and something that could slow things down a lot in this hobby and force a bit of a correction. And that's a labor dispute in baseball. Labor disputes, they are one of the worst things that can happen for the hobby. From a manufacturer standpoint, Jason Mashra, the president of Upper Deck, is famous at saying, we're as nimble as an oil tanker when it comes to that stuff. You know, you commit to these deals with the leagues and you commit to make a certain amount of product. And when something like that happens, you can't steer away from it. And from all I'm seeing right now with regard to baseball is the owners do not want the players do not want a salary cap. The owners do, and it's not looking good for baseball next season. That could cause a real significant, something from COVID. We were talking about how COVID made everything better for the hobby with regard to demand and interest and excitement. This would be the first real test if there is any type of labor dispute next year.
Well,
right.
the Player Association and the properties are sitting at the same table with Fanatics, trying to figure out how they can make money in that business together. So maybe,
right.
maybe there'll be some cooperation that maybe it's the tail wagging the dog, but.
All right, we are hitting right around an hour, so I think it's time to wrap things up. What's future plans for you guys? Chris, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm heading to the Tops Conference on Monday. Excited to see what's coming in the way of football there. And then after that, I'm going to be out at some of the PSA submission centers in hobby shops. So I'll be going to Mojo Breaks in Santa Clara, in 2 weeks, then out to Cards HQ in Georgia a couple weeks after that, and then out at Dave and Adams in New York. So excited to see collectors out at those events, and of course be at the Dallas Card Show and get to hang with my main man, Dr. Jim. So excited for all of those.
Awesome. All right. How about you, Dr. Beckett?
Well, Chris, even though I'm really excited about seeing you at the Dallas show in May, I might be going. I'm 50-50 on going to the Toronto Expo. I haven't been in a number of years. I don't know if you're going to be at that one. Sounds like your schedule is full.
My son's birthday that weekend.
I have been wanting to do that for a number of years, and I'm thinking, why am I waiting? So,
Dr. Jim, there are so many dollar bins with your name on it there. You're going to have the time of your life.
I don't know if there's enough hours in the day. That's the only thing. So, but I have that to look forward to. And John, you're bummed out about Strongsville and Strong Dependence.
No, I am ecstatic about going to see it. I mean, we expect a massive showing from our YouTube vintage community, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of people again, a lot of people for the first time. And once again, For Collectors is hosting a trade night there on Saturday night. That should be a ton of fun. We're going to be in the Holiday Inn ballroom, which is actually the official hotel for the dealers. So we expecting really good attendance, and it's free to get in, and we'll be having pizza. We got sponsors paying the way for us. Thank you to Collector Investor Auctions and Howard Chasser, a few of my favorite things, for sponsoring that event for us. But yeah, thank you guys for a great show. Thank you to the chat. Mr. Keating, your wit and wisdom was pervasive throughout the show. We would love to have you as a call-in guest at any point when you are available. It would be interesting for sure. But yeah, thank you everyone who tuned in, and we will see you next time on Hobby Hotline. Thanks everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.